One of the downsides of professional football games being played once a week rather than every day, like in baseball, is that we have no choice, you especially, but certainly us to a degree, but fill in the gaps between games to, in this case, analyze what kind of 8-2 is this? Is this like a real 8-2 where you go, wow, 8 out of 10, isn't that 800?
I think so, it is.
800
yes.
winning percentage? That's pretty good.
KFAN math.
Or is it, it's 8 victories. They've won 8, but how do we feel about them? In the last couple of games, I just kind of feel like they kind of meandered around a little bit. I put it this way yesterday, Kevin Seifert. I don't believe in the Vikings as much as I feel like I should a team with an 8-2 record. There's something holding me back. Is that just the Danny Downer in me? Although I was somewhat heartened by the fact that Ben Lieber similarly says, good club. Yeah, they're a good club, but I still don't feel it. I don't feel what I think I should feel at 8-2. Do you feel, or do you think, again, we're all just overanalyzing because we got these gaps to fill in? If there was another game to play, we wouldn't have the time to have to labor over this kind of nonsense.
Well, a lot of it is like, how do you define what an 8-2 team should feel like? I mean, how many fan bases feel better about their team in the NFC right now than the Vikings fans probably feel about their team?
One.
Yeah, Lions, and maybe Eagles fans are starting to feel good about
Eagles, I'm starting to worry about a little bit. It feels like they're getting their mojo.
They're getting pretty good.
Yeah.
And then you talk about AFC as a couple of teams. And so I actually, I have a story on this topic for tomorrow.
Okay,
actually.
spill the tea.
And so I'll give a little preview.
Give us some hints.
So 2 years ago, they were also 8-2. One of the most enigmatic 8-2, 13-4 teams ever. And I did a story then where I talked to the guy who developed DVOA, which I know you're a big fan of.
Love DVOA.
It's the analytic that basically gives you the total perception under the hood of how good a team is or isn't. And at that point, it had the Vikings at like the 28th best team in the league, and said that they had
2 years ago.
2 years ago, and had overperformed their win projection by like 5 games, and were very likely to lose in the first round of the playoffs, which was true. And so I called him back this week and talked to him about this team, and he said it's like there's no comparison between the two teams when you look at what they're doing in games, how their offense, defense, special teams is performing relative to the rest of the league, and especially defensively. Like he's got the Vikings defense as being the best in the league, and not by a little bit, by a lot. And the offense being pretty much an NFL average, and special teams about NFL average. And so he looks at them as like they're being powered by a elite, 50% of the team, and one that's much better than any of the next best NFL defense. And if you I guess we could say, well, 4 of their wins have been against AFC South teams, but when you look at how the defense is played and you adjust it for the opponents they play, they've actually played a lot of good offenses. Whether it's like the Texans, that offense is pretty good, even though they beat them well. The Packers, a lot of teams, Lions,
right.
And so long story short, he feels like this is a much sturdier, he feels like his analytics show this is a much sturdier, better performing and more formidable 8-2 than we saw last year. Does that mean they're going to win the Super Bowl? He's not saying that, but this, I think what he is saying and what his numbers show is that this is a team that very much has gotten to 8-2 based on what it has done, and not based on luck or fluke or whatever you wanted to call what happened 2 years ago.
Well, I think the part of what you're talking about here, and perhaps writing about and quoting him on, is the most persuasive comeback to my feeling not inspired by the 8-2, and it's the defense.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at more obvious, less sophisticated stats like points per game.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this also includes, stats that your offense can get, points that your offense can give up. But nevertheless, let's listen. Let's look at the teams at the top, being the stingiest in terms of points per game. Chargers, Steelers, Broncos, Vikings fourth at 17.0 a game. Lions right behind us, and Eagles. Yeah. Pretty good records there. Yeah. That tells us something. And
I think that's true for takeaway, turnovers, yes. Also sacks,
correct.
Some other stats as well.
So I think for me, this is more, it may not even be fair to the body of work, because I do think what's entering my mind are two things. One, the head coach, as admired as he is everywhere, allegedly, has no playoff victories yet, and they hadn't been around long, but there's not a litany of games you go, hey, you see how he coached his ass off in that game. It's one game. It's a game they probably should have won, and they didn't. That was the game where they saved Daniel Jones' career, extended it for a couple years. Now it's over.
His last good game of his career.
Exactly right. And it's who the quarterback is. And he was, again, I think you wrote, he may have had his best game last week in a lot of ways, which we will discuss in more detail here later. But same thing. I got nothing. I don't know. I don't have any idea how he's going to react. I know how you could say he's coached, and you could say, well, he's just going to continue the same habits that he's established during the regular season. But I don't know any of that. So I think that may be part of the bias that's affecting me. I think that, and also the way the last three games really, quite frankly, have played out, where they've won them and you never felt like they were in really, really big trouble, but you said they were in more trouble in two of them than they really should have been if they're an 8-2, the kind of 8-2 team where you say you're up on that top plateau. So I think those all give me pause. The defense, it's hard to argue with, because like you said, the advanced stats are good for them, and the more obvious ones also put them in very good positioning. Yeah,
and talking to Justin Jefferson after the game, and he was he's been pretty honest about the performance of the offense throughout the year, and that they've done some good things, but they're leaving a lot out there, and there's mistakes that are preventing them from putting games away. Just in Tennessee, I think Jalen Naylor dropped a touchdown pass.
Undeniable.
And there was another one where, I guess it's more subjective, but Jordan Addison's having cramps, so he's maybe not running as fast as he slows down a little bit on a deep pass, and the ball bounces in front of him in the end zone. That could have been another one. So, what Justin was saying is if the offense can put it all together and have games, because they already have a margin for error that's being provided by the defense for the most part in most games. If they can put it all together, he's there's not many teams that are going to be able to just play better than them on the field on a given day if the offense is put it together and the defense keeps playing the way it is, especially with the turnovers and getting it, giving them advantage, field position advantages, et cetera. So, that potential still sits there. And so that, and I think that's the way a lot of the people in the locker room are viewing it. And so we'll see if that actually happens. I mean, that's every team that falls short is usually some version of, we just didn't put it all together. So that's not like the Vikings are alone there. That's the difference between making the playoffs and winning the Super Bowl, is putting it all together at the right time. And so it's a high bar to hit.
Are we also, though, beginning to see some cracks in the offense that we felt more heartened about earlier? I want to discuss that. I want to get to, there's a lot of different ways to go. I do want to talk in a little more depth about Sam Darnold, and also, again, is it getting harder by the week to think that they're going to be able to keep the defensive coordinator unless they make the unprecedented step to give him the same amount of money, literally the same amount of money that they're going to give the head coach when they extend his deal.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot on the plate. Seifert in studio now. Luigi will talk hockey with your Minnesota Wild, who are back in action tonight on the Fan. He will join at 5. There's some Danny Downers in the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line listening to the program via 64686 who are checking in. Kevin Seifert is with us in studio. Example, the fatal flaw in this is from Chris, in the Vikings defensive rankings, is that the secondary is going to get exposed by good teams. They are not legit, and they will crumble. Do we have any reason to question the...
Well, that person's argument would be bolstered by the fact that the two really good veteran quarterbacks that they've played this year, Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, both
found ways to win.
Yeah, they both got him over 30 points, and a lot of the quarterbacks they faced have not been nearly as good or experienced as those guys. Brock Purdy's pretty highly ranked, but he obviously was bamboozled by the scheme, and Jordan Love for a while was until he turned it on late in that game.
Are we worrying? One of your compadres, you have several people who cover the team every day. Well, your compadres, I mean, not that you work with, but that you are in the same, media rooms with.
Sure.
Had a piece yesterday, or maybe it was today. I can't remember when I read it, suggesting that our promising rushing numbers are starting to kind of come back to the pack a little bit, and there may even be cause for concern about the interior part of the offensive line. I think now we're back down to, I think it's like 4 yards a carry, 4 yards an attempt. That we've gone from promising at times to maybe, are we heading back into, we're just kind of running the mill, even if we love Aaron Jones? Do you share any of that concern?
I don't. Jacksonville 2 weeks ago, they had their best rushing game of the year, both by attempts and yardage. And in part, that was because of the defense that they employed to take Justin Jefferson away. They basically left the middle of the field open. Tennessee has two really good interior defensive tackles who had their way with the Vikings interior offensive line. I don't know if that's the best tandem in the league, but they're very good. Jeffrey Simmons, everybody knows that he's very good, and especially him. And they had made a change at right guard where Ed Ingram was benched and Dalton Reisner was made the starter, and so that's the first time Dalton Reisner's ever played right guard in his life, to my understanding.
So you're going to give him a minute, you're thinking?
Give him a minute, but there's no doubt. I'm not going to pretend that they had a good rushing game against the Titans. It looked like they were trying to avoid the middle at all costs with those pitches, the toss sweeps, and trying to get away from the middle as much as they could. And when they did go in the middle, it was just as, their best success was with Sam Darnold, on the sneaks, and I think he had total of 3 first downs plus the touchdown. And so 4 first downs, I guess, officially. And so that was definitely a concern, but I do think that might have been game specific. We'll see if they start having a couple games where the interior of the line is just getting handled to the point where they're not able to run in the middle. That's a concern, but I haven't seen that trend over time quite yet.
All right, let's listen to, this is a Vikings talking point that we did not get to yesterday, at least the audio. We certainly discussed Sam Darnold a lot, and it will lead us into a Darnold discussion with Seifert as well. This is the best of Sam from Nashville.
Minnesota is 3 of 3 on third down today, all on this possession, and all have amounted to first downs by the air. So Darnold has a passing touchdown of 47 yards to Jordan Addison, 3 for 3 on third down, all via air. Sam, the man on the fan, came to play today, Pete.
Yeah, he did, and he's been making things happen with his legs, which is good. And again, the more we run the football, I think the less pressure he's going to see.
Darnold back to pass, hit as he throws. Finds Addison over the middle. 25-20, near side 10-5. Touchdown! Jordan Addison with his 4th touchdown this season. It's a 47-yard strike from Sam, the man on the fan, and the Vikings have taken a 6-3 lead.
That was a nickel on one side and a corner on the other side blitzing, and great job by the offensive line to block up the middle, allow Darnold to step up, and when you're sacrificing coverage for blitz, you're going to get run after the catch, and that's exactly what happened. So great job by Sam Darnold managing the blitz.
Third down. This is 3rd and 6 from its own 35. 3 receivers left. Hawkinson stands up to the right. Darnold back to pass. He's pressured again. Rolls to the left. Throws. Caught at the 35 of the Tennessee Titans. He's Justin Jefferson with a reception of 32 yards and a first down for the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, Paul, this is just one spot where you don't really want to go backwards, and if the pass isn't there, get rid of it. All right, you can throw it out of the back of the end zone. So I'm all for being aggressive right here as we go empty, but let's be prudent.
Vikings 3 of 3 on third down this possession, all via pass. 3rd and 7. from the Tennessee 18. Darnold out of the shotgun. 4-man rush by the Titans, and Darnold nearly was sacked. He got out of it. Rolls out to the left, pumps, turns it up 15. First down! Sam Darnold with fortitude and tenacity. He proved indefatigable when Tavondre Sweat, the second-round rookie from Texas, had him dead to rights but couldn't bring him down. First down.
There's your guy, and I think you had a tweet yesterday, Seifert, discussing how effective he was with his legs.
Yeah.
We just heard it. That was maybe the most vivid example of exactly that. I thought his mobility throughout that game. He also had a early there on the 15, third and I want to say 6 or 7. He's got a spin out of it to the right and makes a nice throw for a 15-yard play. That was, I think, part of their first touchdown drive, but it doesn't go anywhere. They're punting without that conversion. So he minimized, obviously, the stupid plays and maximized what he can do getting away from pressure.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that you just want him to break even, just, you don't have to do anything great, but you don't have to don't do anything bad, was kind of belied by the fact that he really made maybe one mistake on that fumbled pitch, if you want to credit to him, and the rest was
I still don't blame him on that one.
Yeah, and you
I know officially.
Certainly, you can argue both ways about how that should have gone down. But the encouraging thing is he actually, was whatever the line is of average, don't screw it up. He was above that for almost all the game. And, you played the replay of the Addison touchdown. I think that he was within an inch of getting hit by one of the guys that was blitzing from his backside. And he's had a couple times this year where he's tried to spin out of pass rushes and he's spun into long sacks, but this time he was able to spin out and there was open field for him in the flat. And so, O'Connell and Wes Phillips both have talked this week about him handling some, kind of vaguely, but handling some issues that were happening around them, and basically that he was able to function when under pressure. And I think the ESPN stat was that he was pressured on more passes in this game than he had been in any game this season, and he had I think he was 6 of 9 for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns when under pressure, and so that was that kind of, if you say performance under pressure is the top way to evaluate a quarterback, then that was, would qualify as his best game of the year.
Is there a decent chance he could end up back with the Jets next year?
Well,
a new GM, right? They fired their GM.
They did.
That's the A-Raj connection.
You would think that the owner's the A-Raj connection. It's hard to imagine Aaron Rodgers wanting to subject himself to a third year of what's happened there. And I don't know if he wants to play anymore. I've, kind of innocently suggested that there might be a place for him to finish out his career,
here,
much like Brett Favre did. I would never root for something like that. I certainly wouldn't try to talk anybody from the Vikings into doing it. But there's only one quarterback under contract for the Vikings next year, and he hasn't played a single down in the National Football League.
What a troll.
So somebody, they're going to have to have a veteran of some level.
We ain't signing
Could
him.
he be the bridge from Darnold to J.J. McCarthy?
Oh, my God. That would be ballsy. I don't see them.
No.
I don't see him doing it, right? Because I got to believe they think McCarthy, they want to start the clock on McCarthy next year.
Yeah, you can't sign Aaron Rodgers for a 1-year, $10 million deal like they have with Darnold this year and then have him just sitting there in case McCarthy's not ready. So obviously there's a lot of fantasy in what I'm talking about. But
could you do 1 year, $20 million with Rodgers and say, JJ, we're putting it off a year?
I mean, if he would do that.
But would you do that? In all seriousness, would you do that at this point? I'm not sure, and I'm a huge A-Raj guy.
No, because
I'm not sure I would. I don't
sign Aaron Rodgers, no matter what condition he's in, obviously, to just hold the place warm until McCarthy is ready to play. I think they want McCarthy to play as soon as he can, for lots of reasons, including the fact that you get the salary cap bump from not having to pay.
So you're ruling out keeping Darnold?
I can't rule it out. I mean, I think I've been asking around on that, and there's a lot left to be written in that story because, you're talking about how is he going to function in a playoff.
I think it remains to be seen. You're right.
Right. In a playoff, push to the playoffs. If they get it into the playoffs, assuming they do, how does he perform in the playoffs as a starter? And that, would I think inform a lot of these teams that will be looking for at least a short-term veteran starter next year. If you bring him back, number one, does he want that to sign up for that? Would he be the rarest of the rare who says, this is the right place for me, no matter what, no matter what my playing time is going to be. And I don't know that that's even fair to expect that from him. And so, you would think that they will thank him for his services. He will thank them for the opportunity, and that he'll move on. But I guess a lot left of that story. There's a lot left in that story yet.
Bradshaw and Brian, KFAN text line questions for Seifert 64686. Let's get one more pause in. Stay on schedule. Louis will join in about an hour, and top 5 at 5. We will have one today, correct?
I'll be ready.
I'm looking forward to it.
Time now for the Vikings Report on the Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings safety Cam Bynum joins Barrero next after this from Miller Lite.
This is as good a time as any to get into this. Kevin Seifert is still with us in studio. Guardsy, we hit the calendar of calamity because this is an entry that Dan Minnesota did not submit to us. There's some really good ones that we may get to later between 5:15 and 5:30. This is one Seifert provided unknowingly.
It's the Minnesota sports calendar of calamity.
I'm pretty sure I was at this game, and I'm pretty sure I have zero recollection of this wrinkle. On this date in 1989, Buddy Ryan, then the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, his team, there's just like about last seconds of a game, they're up 9-7. 10-9, that's right. 10-9 because Rich Carlos had missed an extra point. I think Herschel Walker had a kickoff return for a touchdown in that game. So it's a 1-point game. The Eagles have to punt with like 12 seconds to go, up 1. And unbeknownst to the officials, to the Viking sidelines, to anybody apparently at the time watching on TV, to ensure that the kick was not blocked, Buddy Ryan sent out 14 players. Now, I think the limit's supposed to be 11.
Yes.
And it wasn't until after the fact that anybody figured this out. And wasn't the story that he said, well, even if we assumed they'd catch us, but we'd, in the meantime, punt, that would take more seconds off the clock. We'll take the 5-yard penalty. It's only 5 yards, not going to make that big a difference. But then no one noticed. Obviously, the kick did not get blocked. Yeah. And I think it was a fair catch by
Leo Lewis.
It was Leo Lewis. That's exactly it. And the Vikings ended up losing that game 10-9. I have no recollection of that.
I don't think it didn't surface on that day. I think later they asked Buddy Ryan like what about like the moral propriety? It's like one thing if you make a mistake or a guy's running on the field, like you intentionally sent 3 extra guys out there, and he goes, morals. He said, I should have sent 15 people out there.
That's it.
But I just loved it because for a lot of reasons. One, it like the whole crowd of officiating is worse than it's ever been. Takes a hit on that one when you had a. If you watch the video, it's like knowing it ahead of time. It's so obvious that it doesn't look right.
They got an army at the line of scrimmage.
All you see is white jerseys everywhere, and they slow it down and they put the number over all 14 of them, and so it's definitely accurate.
God, that was good.
And nobody caught it, and the only way the Vikings could have won that game is by blocking the kick. Like they weren't going to, unless Leo Lewis was going to return a punt for touchdown, I guess. But if you have 14 guys out there, it's hard to do that. They weren't going to throw a Hail Mary in that weather. And so, and there's been other times throughout the NFL where people have intentionally taken penalties to run time off the clock. But like that one was so blatant, that it's amazing it wasn't caught.
That's as brazen as one can get. Yeah. And with no one figuring the thing, because like you said, okay, 12 men, you can sneak somebody one extra one on there, but you think somebody would be paying attention to it, and obviously nobody on certainly the Vikings sideline was paying attention. 14 guys on the field.
Yeah,
remarkable. I've got a lot of texts from people starting to worry in the wake of the news that the assumption that the Cowboys are going to make a coaching change, that everybody's going to have to probably go there. Although with Jerry Jones, you never know. The Bears clearly are going to make a change. There's going to be some other jobs, so they want to know: is there some inventive way? Despite his declaration last week, which we discussed, that Vikings brain wizards can keep Brian Flores with some fancy title, or is that just not realistic if the right team does indeed finally come calling for him?
Yeah, I mean, they would certainly it would be in their interest to show him whatever love they can show him, but they can't make him the head coach. They can't, they can't pay him the same amount that the head coach would get, although they can still.
What if the Bears come after KOC? He's not under contract.
Well, he is. KOC is under contract through the end of the 2025 season.
Oh, I misunderstood that. Okay, so he's not a free agent.
But the controversy would be like, do you let him go into his free agency year?
Gotcha.
And my guess is, based on this performance, it's just a matter of time before they get down to that and figure it out. But in the case of Flores, like if there's a job that he wants. I don't know that there's anything that anybody could do to talk a person out of that, but they certainly can do everything they can to make him feel as wanted as possible, to avoid him having to think about whether he wants to take a job that he thinks is maybe not as ideal.
Okay, so what is the current trend, if for want of a better term, the current fashion when it comes to what you want out of your head coach? Is it a great offensive mind? Have we seen enough great defensive coaches make the jump that now it's no, just get the best coach you can? Because my assumption for a team such as Chicago would be that the emphasis is going to be, the requirement is, we have to get a great offensive mind with this quarterback. We can't mess around anymore. He's going to be probably traumatized enough as it is.
Yeah.
Or do you think now it's each team, a lot different teams are going with different approaches regarding head coach?
Well, I think every team wants the outcome to be that somehow you have a great offensive group of coaches around either the quarterback you're about to draft or the quarterback that got drafted. Whether that's the head coach or not, it's become this circular discussion where you want the best leader and the best leader of men in front of the room and all that. And if you hire that guy, and let's say he's not a quarterback / offensive guy per se, and he goes out and hires a really good one, if that guy succeeds, he's going to likely be on a lot of lists to be head coach himself, and so you don't keep him. Like you look at Washington, and they hired Dan Quinn to be the defense coordinator. He hired Cliff Kingsbury to be the offense coordinator. They're having a pretty good season. Would they lose Cliff Kingsbury to another team because of his ability to coach quarterbacks? And so, honestly, the Kevin O'Connell profile, I think, is still the ideal. Not every team can do it, but a guy who clearly knows his way around quarterbacks, clearly knows his way around offensive scheming and how to take advantage of personnel, but also has some front of the room skills as well. And I know you can't always only judge it based on the 2-minute videos the Vikings put out.
You've become just obsessed with those videos.
Matthew Collar wrote an entire story about it for Purple Insider. It was pretty good, actually. But I do think that when you talk to people inside the building and you talk to people who've known Kevin O'Connell, he's not just this quarterback whisperer guy and leaves everything else to other people. I think there's definitely some empathy and leadership qualities that have helped them win a lot of these games the past 3 seasons. So that's the ideal if you can find one, but there's not enough to go around. And so then you get to the leader of men, best leader guy, best administrator guy, and hope that he can hire an offensive coach that can stick around for a few years.
So I talked about this a little bit with Lieber yesterday. I wonder if your answer is going to be poisoned by the number of games you've covered of the Vikings traveling to Chicago over the years, over the decades, where they have found a way to lose or where they seem to be the superior team and something screwy happens. So are you assuming the Vikings are in danger of that taking place again?
I've worked hard to avoid that because that really hasn't necessarily happened in the O'Connell era. They won the last game of the year in Chicago. I think the Bears were more or less tanking for the final to be the number 1 pick, and the Vikings were not even playing their starters because they'd already won the division, and it was just kind of a nothing game. But then last year, that was the first game they played without Justin Jefferson after his injury, and so they weren't great offensively, but they did manage to win the game. I think Jordan Hicks had a fumble return for a touchdown, and and the Bears quarterback got hurt, and they ended up playing against Bajent the rest of the way. And it was a close game, but it didn't feel like one where they were like hand delivering it to the Bears. So I try not to allow the vibes of the long-term vibes to affect my thoughts about this particular game. I don't think it's going to be an easy game, and they haven't, after those first few games of the season, they haven't really been blowing people out, but I think they're the better team.
Yeah, they're definitely they should be. That's for sure. I mentioned to you off air, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday. I think the Bears did at least. The Bears could come out of that last game as devastating as the finish was, at least saying, okay, we showed a little something offensively where we were, where the previous game we had 9 sacks, 10 sacks, whatever the case may be. That we got a little juice offensively, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to move the ball at will against this defense. No,
and like you would like to think that a rookie quarterback, no matter how far advanced he is going to struggle with some of the things that he sees from the Vikings scheme in terms of line of scrimmage decisions he has to make before the Vikings really set themselves and that sort of thing. And so that, like all the advantages there would seem to be in the Vikings' favor. But what Brian Flores said today is that the thing that really concerns you about a guy like that, to start, is just how mobile he is. And it's like real mobility. It's like he can get to the, around you and not just like move around in the pocket. He's a guy who can, I think he had 60, some yards in the first half of the game the other day. And so Caleb Williams can absolutely beat you running more than I think people realize for some reason. And that's a concern clearly of the Vikings. And so we'll see if he can off schedule make things a little more difficult on the Vikings.
Does the NFL have a version of the NBA last 2 minutes report in which, for example, they opine on the, I thought, egregiously bad unsportsmanlike call in the end zone that would have, if it hadn't been called, given the ball to the Titans and taken basically
they hit
7
on Jordan
points
Addison.
away? Yeah.
No, they did not, but they did do a pull report on that, and the referee said that it was not a case per se of a hit to the head, but a launching. And my understanding of the launching is that you have to leave one or both of your feet in order to qualify for the launch. And like if you watch I didn't watch it too many times. The Titans guys watched it a million times, and they felt pretty confident that was not a launch. And so we'll see if he ends up the player gets fined for that or not. Usually that's the tip off. That's the tip off.
Yeah.
You look at the 2 Sam Darnold plays this year. The Rams pass rusher got fined for that face mask, but the Colts pass rusher did not. And so the NFL agreed with the Vikings on 1 of 2, I guess is the best way to look at that. And so we'll see what the NFL says about that particular play. But that was a huge one. That was 4th down. That should have,
that was,
and maybe the Vikings stop them and get the ball back at the 40 or get the ball back at the 40 and they're right back in business. But they scored a touchdown the very next play.
I actually thought also, and I guess this is what, we talk about what star players tend to attract is flags. I thought the first pass interference penalty with JJ was shaky at best. And then there was an illegal contact one where he was like leaving the field. He wasn't even asking for anything. And that also kept the drive alive after the Titans, I think, had cut it to 10.
Yeah, they had two drives extended by, that should have been punt, in this case, the first case, turnover on downs, and the second case, a punt, that should have, and they end up scoring touchdowns on both of them. So there was a lot. I mean, there was never a point in the game where I felt like, the Titans look like they're a pretty good team, but there was plenty of times where if those things had not happened, I mean, the final penalty thing was like 13-3. Titans had 13 penalties and Vikings had 3. And so those things, penalties don't always decide outcomes of games, but in this case, it certainly leaned things in the Vikings' favor.
Well, how is it possible, given how, much preparation and planning goes into each and every one, each game, each team, some better than others, that offensive tackles can still line up at a place where they are considered illegal? Because I mean, with receivers, I thought they usually even point like, okay, am I in the right spot?
Yeah.
it's astounding to me that tackles don't do the same thing, or can they not do the same thing?
Well, they're supposed to have their head in a certain spot relative to the waist, but there's also a competitive advantage. Like, if you're a tackle and you're setting up to pass block, like the further back you are. So I think,
but if they're going to call it, then there's no point in doing it.
So then it gets to be subjective. Like, how far can I push it? How close can I get? And so there's not really, like, it's not the same as receiver where you can ask the official, like, are you in the right spot? And so, like, that there's a little bit more competitiveness going on there. And the same thing with, like, everybody said, well, the Chiefs tackle always starts early. It looks like a false start every time. Well, like, or is he timing it better than everybody else? But regardless, that's a subjective thing that every officiating crew, unfortunately, officiates a little bit differently. But it's not quite the same as a receiver not being on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, it was, and that was that nullified. Was it a 52-yard or 51-yard touchdown pass?
Yeah.
That was
to Ridley. Yep.
That was another. And I mean, look, as you say, the Titans are their own worst enemy. It's hard for me to believe they deserve anything because their self-inflicted wounds are pretty apparent. But those were, as games go, it was uncanny the number of. In fact, it actually became a talking point on the TV broadcast, which is rare. Even with whoever the former official was, I can't remember who was in the booth or who was connected to the game. And he agreed with, I think,
probably Blandino.
It may have been whoever it was said that wasn't a launch in his view. He just thought that was in the classification of you'd like to think they talk about it a little bit. Now, what probably made it difficult was two flags were thrown, as I recall. Two different officials threw flags on that play.
Yeah.
And so does that get into the, if two of us both thought it, then there must be something there.
And frankly, the violence of the hit sent Addison flying to the point where you're like that. I mean, that has to be illegal. Like, that's the reaction.
Right.
Anytime there's just a massive hit in the NFL right now, there's at least a question about whether it's a legal hit.
Yeah, and Lieber mentioned, he said that you could also argue, if you really want to get technical or really picky, is that's a throw a quarterback's got to think about. Mm-hmm. Now, again, it's fourth down, so you got to make a play.
That was my big criticism of Darnold throughout. He threw a couple hospital balls. There was one where Addison jumped as high as he possibly could for it and paid for it by getting just drilled in the back. And then there was that pass as well. And another one where he jumped and wasn't able to get his feet in bounds, and it was a little more accurate. But overall, I thought, like I said, still probably Darnold's potentially best game of the season or one of them. But there were a few passes, especially to Addison, that kind of exposed him. So do you buy the notion that in the NFC, the Lions deserve to be on their own plateau? Doesn't mean they're unbeatable, but that they played to a place where you got to put them on their own. If we broaden out the discussion, forget conferences. Who's on the very top? Who are you putting right now on the top plateau? Probably Lions, Bills, Chiefs. I
think that's it.
Yeah,
I thought the Ravens. I don't want to give up on the Ravens, but they're a little bit weird.
Yeah, and Lamar Jackson might win the MVP again and still lose to Mahomes, or maybe in this case Josh Allen in the playoffs.
Any final thoughts on the big game this Saturday in Bloomington, Indiana? I should say Columbus, Ohio State, and my undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. The game I've been waiting my whole life for.
How many more contract extensions is the head coach going to get between now and then? That's
two or three more.
Yeah, he deserves them all. I can only imagine what it feels like to be.
Did you ever have a moment like this at Virginia?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's like Virginia has
basketball.
Basketball we did have that, but for football we muddle along, and then just a team that nobody thinks about, and then a combination of the right things happen, and all of a sudden you're playing Ohio State in the biggest game in history.
Can't wait. I want to do it.
Will you go? Do you think?
No, I'm not going to go. I'm not that.
How many more times
committed.
is that going to happen?
Well, it's not. You're right. That's going to be the regret.
When Virginia made the Final Four, I went.
Where was that?
Here.
Well, quite a commitment.
Yeah, I went all the way downtown.
Financially and emotionally.
I went downtown and watched the game.
Yeah, I just think it would be, if it was Bloomington, I think it would make more sense. I'm going to go to Columbus and do what?
It's beautiful this time of year.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I think they're still double-digit underdogs. A lot of people don't believe in the club.
All the guy does is win.
We'll have to see. Anything else before we go? Injuries were good, right? We're pretty clean right now.
Yeah, I think there's nothing too concerning at this point. We'll see about Wednesday when practice starts.
Do we play good in real? Do we play well on real grass? When's the last time we played on real grass?
Real grass,
or is there real grass at Soldier Field? I can't even remember. I think it still is, isn't it?
It's dirt.
Well, it's not good
dirt.
grass.
It's dirt. Now I'm going back through the season. I'm sure they've played on grass, although LA is not. Packers have the hybrid grass.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, probably better grass though. The Soldier Field grass.
Packers grass is weird. It's like it's in perfect condition, but it's like hybrid. It's half turf, half grass, and it's really slippery. And everyone freaks out about what kind of cleats to wear. The seven studs, and so there's always all this controversy. And so I guess to have some version of grass in Green Bay is you've got to do some things differently, but it's a very weird surface that I think they get an underrated home field advantage.
We get any flex rumors?
I think we would have needed to know today if the Vikings Cardinals game was going to get flexed to Monday night, which was a possibility at least based on what we had all heard. But I haven't, unless something happened while I'm sitting in here, I haven't heard anything.
Unfortunate. And then next week it's. Of course, Atlanta could be buried by then. I don't know who Atlanta's playing this week. Yeah. Oh no, they might be off because I said Cousins. Yeah, he's going to do the NBC deal.
That's what people do, like in their last year as a player, to sort of try out for future jobs. So I don't know what that means, but
timing not good for him in that regard.
It was bad enough the other day that Michael Penix played.
Well, I was going to say, can you rule out? Is it possible Penix will start against us on the 8th?
It's unlikely, but it doesn't mean he won't play.
Yeah.
But I can't wait for the week of discussion, because this will be the big topic, is regardless of how, well you think the Vikings 8-2, what that means, like how much would they have been any better with Cousins? I mean, did they just save $35 million this year and have the same record they would have had anyway? And the same, potential playoff path? I mean, I don't know if they could have done any better with Cousins to this point.
It's hard to believe they could have. Yeah. From a record standpoint, I don't know that there's any chance of that.
Yeah, they took a big dead money hit, but they still signed a bunch of defensive players they may not have signed otherwise. So I think that's going to be a fun analysis. Is like, the effect of losing Cousins is potentially zilch.
I think that was a CBS game, so it was the other. It was a Sterator.
Sterator. Sterator.
Yeah, yes. Sterator. And he was he doesn't ever come on real strong, but he basically said, I don't think that's a call that I would have made. Somebody's bitter about the suggestion that Darnold left his receiver hanging out to dry a couple times. Let's see you throw a better ball. You guys are just. If I lived in Minnesota, he must be dictating. I would never listen to you. I only listen because I'm in New York.
What would he do if he lived in Minnesota? Who would he be listening to that he can't listen to? Everything's available.
He can listen to whatever he wants to listen to on the free iHeartRadio app.
That's the beauty
all
of it,
over the country. You can pick and choose whatever you want to listen to.
He's very unhappy.
Yeah,
apparently with that second guess.
I said the guy had probably his best game of the year. I'm allowed to have some balance here.
We'll see you in Chicago. Actually, no. You'll be in Chicago. I won't.
Well, you've got time to decide. No, I'm going to go Saturday evening and. Come back Monday morning.
You hit the city or you stay by the airport?
I'm an airport guy.
Yeah, now. Get in, get out. You're past that. You don't need to. You've seen the Magnificent Mile. We're happy for you.
I wanted to stay downtown in Nashville, but hotel prices in Nashville are like New York prices.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Sources say a lot of people on the beat and possibly the Vikings Entertainment Network are taking it easy in Chicago on Saturday night after their own performances in Nashville.
I think a lot of fun was had.
Yeah, I think
good for them.
Yeah, Nash Vegas. Smoke them if you got them.
Yeah.
Can't get mad at it.
No,
for sure. Safe travels.
Thank you, sir.
We'll talk next week. Kevin Seifert in studio. Louis, in about a half hour, top 5 will include?
Honestly, it's going to include audio from the introductory Tim Brewster press conference. That's what I've been doing the last 25 minutes. It finally got posted.
Outstanding.
So we'll play a couple of thoughts. Coach Brew back in the saddle.
All is right with the world.